the Pima County Election Integrity Commission. If you would all please stand if you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. District 1, Misty Atkins. District 2, County Commissioner DeLarge.
Here.
District 3, Commissioner Mace. District 4, Commissioner Caswell.
Present.
District 5, Commissioner Tillman.
Here.
Libertarian Party, Commissioner Stewart. Green Party, Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Okay, he's online. Republican Party, Commissioner Beresny.
Chairman, I do believe Mr. Beresny has submitted a resignation letter to the party chair.
Okay, then I'm assuming that we'll see somebody new shortly. All right. County Administrator, Commissioner Smith.
Present.
And the Democratic Party representative is Cherny is here, and Director Hargrove, I assume, is otherwise occupied, and Commissioner Mace is here. Good. We now have a quorum. Call to the public. Is there anybody that wishes to address the commission? Please give us your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Morning, my name is Tim Locks. Last Tuesday, a team of us descended upon the Board of Supervisors and highlighted several issues with chain of custody. I gave a handout to everyone. There are 18 examples with a key. The packet that you were given represents the issues we brought up. Just 1 year ago in this room, our recorder and her then chief deputy sat and spewed their rhetoric about voter roll maintenance, the two-party rule they follow, staffed ballot boxes, as well as other topics. It took around an hour and a half. I suppose it was designed to instill some type of confidence that we have free and fair elections. If there's anything I've learned since that meeting last July, it's that it's not what we see that is of concern, it's what we don't see. That has been the focus of my election work this past year. Of note was the misstatement that every month the NCOAA check, which is National Change of Address run, was conducted monthly and twice before elections. A records request proved that absolutely false. There was one NCOAA run in 2023. People are allowed to vote inside the 29-day registration cutoff, which violates ARS. This is likely due to uncertified homegrown software and or e-poll book software. They talked about cleaning voter rolls. There are still almost 400 active voters aged 100 or more. The oldest known living person is 112 years, yet in your example you'll see someone there listed as 122 years old. The next oldest living person is aged 109. 29 of the people remaining on the rolls are 109 years of age or older. There are many more areas of concern with the data. There are over 109,000 with no voter history at all. 65,000 are on the active early vote list. They talk a good talk about the two-party rule. Look at some of the chain of custody documents in front of you. No couriers, only one courier. Site staff signatures missing. Ballot count scratched off. Boxes with no or damaged seals. The recorder herself delivered a ballot box to the ballot processing center a week after the election ended. We have data, in fact, that the two-party rule is not being followed for couriers. We know some of the people have changed parties from Democrat to either PND or IND. Apparently, the recorder is of the opinion that PND and IND are parties. They are not. The EPM Chapter 2, Section I-7B is not being followed. The mess with the post office is off the charts. The recorder last July 2 times made reference to her crew picking up ballots at Cherry Bell, but there is not one shred of paperwork showing who these couriers were. We've learned that ballots are being delivered to at least one vote center on Election Day. If you would allow me,
Please
I
wrap
just
it
have
up.
one thing here to finish up. By the post office as a service under an agreement with the Secretary of State, yet there's no paperwork showing such agreement, and the chief person at Cherry Bell has no knowledge of this happening. No ballot accountability for both blank or pre-printed ballots, hundreds of thousands of dollars allocated to clean voter rolls, and its best use was refrigerator magnets. What I've got here are those chain of custody documents. You see a bunch of tabs. Each one of those indicates a violation of one form or another. Thank you.
And again, please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Gisela Aaron. I live in Pima County. So we requested from the county, Pima County, the chain of custody documents per public records request. And these are the violations that Tim showed you all. We also found there was no chain of custody, like he said, between the post office and the recorder's office. It was just a chain of emails they provided, but it doesn't say who were the couriers. Were there 2 couriers? We don't know. So this provides a huge opportunity from early day voting, the first day, through election day, to stuff ballots in. For example, the 65,000 that are mailed out that we don't know, where do they end up? We don't know what's happening to them. And we know from a whistleblower in 2020 that he said, and he contacted DOJ, that 35,000 ballots were inserted in batches of less than 1,000, so it wouldn't be so obvious. Then we found 4 vastly different forms of chain of custody. One was dated June 12, 2020, and it doesn't even have a line for a courier. So this casts uncertainty on the 2020 election as well, because your chain of custody documents are not uniform and equally. Then we found of the early vote centers, there's 15 early vote centers, 11 sites were doled out unknown amounts of ballot stock. These are the forms that were provided to us. It says ballot stock. It doesn't say was there a seal on it or not. It doesn't even say the site on one of them. Here, the vice recorder and her son, when the ballot delivered them to Oro Valley, they were pre-printed paper ballots for site setup, but it doesn't say how many. We don't know how many were voted on. We don't know how many came back and how much paper came back. We had, like I said, we had 11 sites that received unknown and uncounted amounts of ballot stock, of either ballot stock or pre-printed ballots, without any chain of custody, and it renders the 22 election as uncertain or uncertifiable. And because we have found the form that is dated June 2020 with no courier information, it also casts doubt on a 2020. But the most egregious is there's no chain of custody between the post office and the recorder. And so we are asking you to fix this or help fix it. We provided to the Board of Supervisors the violations and the ARS,
Please wrap it up.
EPM. We gave them all the violations they have to fix before it's too late. Thank you.
Please state your name for the record, and again, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Beatrice Stevens. I received in the mail my sample ballot with the incorrect date of August 30th, 2000. I am 4 above all of my vote center locations. I am not on the early voter roll, as it is my God-given right to vote in person, as is the right of many voters in Pima County. This, to me, is an egregious error by the Recorder's Office. Many voters in Pima County received this sample ballot with this error. In small print on the sample ballot is the correct date of July 30th. If I am an elderly person, I cannot see that date, but I can, however, see when I go to see my vote center location a date of August 30th on numerous pages on this sample ballot. If I'm a retiree, which in my District 2 is where I live in District 2, I might just go on vacation and thus be disenfranchised from voting. If I am a young voter in Pima County who has never voted before, and I go to look up my vote center, I just might think, well, gee, I have 30 extra days to vote, and I might take this sample ballot, and I might just throw it on the table, and I might not think about when it is time to go vote. This, my friends, is called disenfranchisement. Then in the mail, I received this tiny little postcard giving me the correct date 1 week later. Unacceptable, my friends. This is not called election integrity. We are to have faith in our electoral process. This does not instill confidence in our election process. We are to get this right. How much time did we have to get this right? Do we double check our work? Does our recorder not have somebody check their work? We are adults. We are to act as adults. This is not okay. Somebody needs to be held accountable for this egregious error in our electoral process. We are to have faith in our elections. This is unacceptable. I am running for office, and I have disenfranchised voters who are contacting me and saying, when am I to go and vote, Miss Stevens? Because I don't know. I went into my vote center, and there
Time
were...
has expired. Please wrap it up.
Fix this. This is not okay.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission? Thank you all for your input. The next item on the agenda, approval of the May 17th, 2024 meeting summaries. Does anybody have any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, they stand approved as presented. Mr. Jerkowitz,
Good morning, sir.
the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Jerkowitz. I'm the Assistant Chief Civil Deputy in the Pima County Attorney's Office. Some of your names and faces I'm familiar with, and some of you may be new. For those of you who have been through this presentation before, nothing has changed, but it's always a good idea to go through it again anyway. We very much appreciate your public service. You're very civic-minded individuals taking your time to come here and serve on this commission. And we want to avoid any negative consequences for your participation in that regard. So this is just to keep everybody out of trouble and keep the public informed of what's actually going on. So there are two main goals to the public records law. One is to make sure that government business is subject to public scrutiny, and that, number two, we're not making any decisions in smoke-filled back rooms where nobody can see what's going on, that all the decisions are being made out in public. So, 38431.01 requires that meetings be open to the public. Meetings of public bodies must be public. If you're not a public body, it doesn't need to be public. But if you are, it does. And we'll talk about what that is. Anyone can quote-unquote attend, and that can be in person or virtual, depending upon the nature of the meeting, and listen to the deliberations and the proceedings. All legal action, that is collective decision-making, must occur in a public meeting. It cannot occur outside of the confines of that public meeting. We have to have a notice and an agenda. All meetings must be properly noticed, and the notice must include an agenda sufficient for a member of the public to understand what will occur at the meeting, and they can make an informed decision about whether they want to attend and hear what's going on, and if there is a call to the public, offer commentary, etc. And when we weigh how we're going to interpret the open meeting law, there's a thumb on the scale. And the statute specifically says any person or entity charged with interpretations of the open meeting law shall construe that in favor of open and public meetings. So if in case there's any doubt, we're always going to default towards being open and public. So who has to comply with the open meeting law? If you're a multi-member public body, then you have to comply with the open meeting law. That's a governing board like the Board of Supervisors, a board, commission, like this commission, committees of the state and political subdivisions, including standing, special, and advisory committees, and subcommittees of all of these different entities as well. So what is a meeting? That's a gathering of a quorum, either in person or technologically, where legal action is proposed, discussed, deliberated, or taken. A quorum is defined by statute to be a majority of a board or commission. That's interpreted to mean a majority of the total number of members set forth either in law or the controlling bylaws for that body. So for example, if you have 9 members on your public body, then a quorum would be 5. So legal action is a collective decision, commitment, or promise made by a public body pursuant to the Constitution, charter, bylaws, or specified scope of appointment and the law. So if we take a vote on something or make a collective decision, that's going to be a legal action. A meeting includes an exchange of electronic communications among a quorum of a public body that involves discussion, deliberation, or the taking of legal action by the public body regarding a matter likely to come before the public body for action. Not something even that's on a current agenda, but something that might arise and be heard by the particular public body. It includes a one-way electronic communication by one member sent to a quorum that proposes legal action. So if I were to send an email to the full commission and say, as a member of the commission, I think we should choose option 3, that one-way communication, even though nobody's responding to it, that would constitute a meeting.
Sorry.
No worries, come on in. Those kind of communications between members of the public body should occur in a public meeting. It is not a violation, and this is the one exception, for a member to express an opinion or discuss an issue with the public through the media, other form of public broadcast communication, or through technological means if it's not principally directed at or given to another member, and it's not a concerted plan to engage in collective deliberation to take legal action. Why do you suppose we have, this is not a violation of the open meeting law?
Considered public communication?
It's been noticed? This is not noticed.
Oh,
It's,
Is
sorry?
it considered a public and open communication?
It's a public and open communication. So if I am doing an interview with the Arizona Daily Star and I express my opinion, I think the Board of Supervisors, us collectively, should take action B. That's perfectly okay because I'm communicating that to a broad segment of the public. I'm not hiding it, I'm not doing it behind closed doors, it's open to the public. The same thing if I do a interview with, or a press conference, whatever it is, if I'm doing it publicly to the media, where the intent is that that's going to be broadly disseminated to the public, it's not something that is, again, behind closed doors and that the public won't learn about it. That's the one statutory exception, yes.
if you're in a situation where, again, using the example of the Daily Star, and you send in a letter to the editor and identify yourself as a member of the commission, public or noticed or not noticed or widely disseminated or,
So again, if you are, there is a statutory exception for communications through the media. If that's an editorial in the Arizona Daily Star, that would be through the media. That's going to be widely disseminated to the public. Now, obviously, not the entire public does not subscribe to the Arizona Daily Star, but they have a very wide distribution. If I make that to just my homeowners association newsletter, that's probably not going to constitute through the media. There's a difference there. So use your good judgment, and this is really to protect the individuals who are on the Board of Supervisors, for example, from being able to discuss in an interview with a television station or a radio station or the newspaper what they're planning to do about an important issue coming before that body.
Can I ask a question about how does this apply in case someone tends to be on Facebook, Twitter, or all those other social media platforms?
Well, that is an excellent question, and I don't know the answer to that. I think there are a lot of different considerations. I don't know whether those would qualify as in the media exception. It also would make a difference whether that was open to everyone or whether it was in a closed media, social media account.
Right?
So I don't know the answer to that specific
Okay.
question. All right, so there's a number of different requirements we have to have for a meeting. We got to have a notice, we need to have an agenda, we need to allow the public to attend, and we have to have minutes. So the notice, we have to conspicuously post a statement on the website stating where public notices of meetings will be posted physically and electronically. We have to post those meeting notices on the website and additional notice as is reasonable and practicable. So notices for this body are going to be posted on the clerk of the board's website for the boards, commissions, and committees. And those are all tracked and posted and available to the public. So if anybody is interested in listening in or attending one of these meetings, they can find out when that's happening. The notice has to be up at least 24 hours prior to the start of the meeting so that I have an opportunity to find out about it and know if I want to attend. It has to be given to the public body so that members aren't surprised about a meeting that's popped up, and to the general public as well. There are some exceptions. So if we have a recess where we take a break and resume within 24 hours, that's an exception. So we have a very long-running issue that's going at this particular commission. We're going to adjourn, take a recess for lunch, and then resume when we come back from lunch. That's perfectly acceptable. It's not two separate meetings. It's one meeting with a recess in between, and we don't need to notice those. The same thing would happen if it was some kind of a hearing, a multi-day hearing, and we stopped at 5 o'clock on one day and resumed at 8 a.m. the next day. It's not two separate meetings. It's one meeting with a recess in between, where we're starting back up within 24 hours and no additional notice is required. If there's an actual emergency, that's an exception. An emergency is really an emergency. And that's going to be very few and far between. I think I've said to this body previously, you're not going to have emergencies. The Board of Supervisors might have an emergency, but this body would not. And there's another exception if there is a violation of the open meeting law, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. It is possible to ratify an action that was taken in violation of the open meeting law, and in that case, 72 hours notice is required for that ratification meeting. The notice must include the name of the public body, the date and time of the meeting, the place, the physical address or the website where the meeting will be taking place, and the agenda. The notice should clearly state whether the meeting will be remote by technological means, if that's going to be happening, provide a website or link to connect with directions on how to do so if that's going to be happening, provide a conference call number for telephonic attendance if that will be happening, and provide for support for questions and difficulty accessing for individuals who are doing virtual attendance. The agenda has to list the specific matters to be discussed, and that's got to provide enough information to reasonably inform the public and members of what that item would constitute so that they would know what's actually going to be discussed. And when in doubt, it's better to provide more detail. Again, that thumb is on the scale. We want the meeting to be open and accessible to members of the public. The public body may discuss, consider, or make decisions only on matters listed on the agenda or matters necessarily related thereto, which is going to be a very narrow exception to specifically listing. So some of the pitfalls that we see with agendas are if it's not comprehensible to a general member of the public. There's legalese used, there are acronyms used that nobody understands, or technical terms that a layperson member of the public wouldn't understand. So if I use the acronym EIC or BOS, a general member of the public might not understand that. So we want to actually spell that out on the agenda. If we use non-descriptive categories such as new business, old business, personnel, announcements, reports, open discussion, training, etc., that's not enough detail. It needs to be specifically what matters are going to be discussed. And there is one exception to that, which we'll discuss. And that is current events, when that's a specific statutory exception. Where there's a presentation by the chief administrator, presiding officer, or member about current events, if current events is on the agenda and the public body does not propose, discuss, deliberate, or take legal action, it's just a report, then that is okay. And so at the Board of Supervisors meetings, the county administrator will sometimes do a report on what's going on. That's just current events, and that is permissible. It is not a catch-all for items that are not properly on the agenda. It is a very narrow statutory exception. So the public may attend that meeting, listen, tape record, video, etc. They have no right to speak unless that is specifically granted in statute. Only the members of the public body have that right. The call to the public is permissible. It is optional. It does not have to be provided, but it can be. If the public is present, they may not disrupt the meeting. So for public attendance, we cannot require the public to sign an attendance sheet unless they are speaking, and then so that we know and can, for the minutes, notate who spoke. We cannot hold meetings in remote locations where the public cannot access. So we could not hold a public meeting at the bottom of the Grand Canyon because the public wouldn't have general access to that. We cannot hold meetings in small meeting rooms so that the public could not attend, or hold meetings at unreasonable times like at 2 a.m. where most people would be unable to attend. So again, the call to the public is optional, not mandatory, and reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions, such as were employed this morning of 3-minute limit, are perfectly acceptable. Banning repetition is permissible, and prohibiting disruptive behavior is also permissible. If the issue that the public is discussing is not on the agenda, the members themselves on the commission cannot discuss it or dialogue with the speaker. At the end, to call to the public, members may instruct staff to study the matter raised, ask that the matter be placed on a future agenda if it's not on the current agenda, and they may respond to personal criticism of themselves. Those are the only exceptions. So if you're going to have a virtual meeting, individuals should identify themselves when speaking. Everyone should be muted unless when they are speaking. Copies of presentations, documents that will be discussed with the agenda, and those should be disseminated and post relevant information on the website, and the meeting should be recorded. So another thing that happens in public meetings, probably not going to happen with this body, but you'd see it at the Board of Supervisors, is that we can have an executive session, and that's where members of the public body will go behind closed doors, and they will meet for a limited number of specified reasons, not in public. That would be to discuss personnel matters, a review of confidential records, for legal advice with the body's attorney, to discuss litigation, negotiations, and settlements with attorneys, for salary discussions, for purchases, tribal negotiations, sale or lease of real property, school safety operations, and security procedures. And those are all spelled out in statute. The only people allowed into the executive session are members of that public body, the person subject to a personnel discussion, the auditor general, the clerk of that public body, the attorney for that public body, and those whose presence is reasonably necessary. So a staff member, for example, who's going to report on some issue. Minutes are required, and they are confidential by law. Now, the general meeting minutes must be kept and made available to the public. Those may be written or recorded. They must be available within 3 working days, 10 days for subcommittees and advisory committees. and those must be in a form that's readily accessible to the public. So if I didn't actually attend the meeting, I can nevertheless, as a member of the public, those minutes. What happened at that meeting by reviewing those minutes. The minutes must include the date, the time, and place of the meeting, the members present or absent, a general description of the matters discussed, and an accurate description of the actions taken by the public body. The minutes must include the names of each speaker in relation to which items, the members attending by telephone or electronically, the names of other remote participants and procedures followed, a description of any emergency if an emergency was declared, and a disclosure statement if ratifying a prior act that was taken where there was a violation of the open meeting law. So these are some of the common pitfalls that public bodies fall into with open meeting law, and that you should be especially conscious of and aware to not have this kind of violation.
What does a spoken wheel mean?
We're going to talk about it.
Oh, okay.
So the first item is serial communications. So that's where there's a statement communicated from one member to another member of the public body. So if the total number of members is equal to a quorum, then that constitutes a meeting. So if, again, we have a 9-member public body, and I go survey 4 other members, so that constitutes 5 people involved. What do you think about this topic? You know, what should we do about that? That constitutes a meeting. Even though we weren't all 5 in one place at the same time, the fact that I went to that many people that constituted a quorum and discussed that information about what should have been happening at a public meeting, that constitutes a meeting. Yes.
It's wonderful when you have an odd number of commissioners. Unfortunately, we don't right now. We have an even number. In my understanding, we have 10 commissioners. A quorum is 6, not 5, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, is it permissible for one member of a commission to go talk to another member of the commission about something that would be likely to come up before that public body?
Yes.
It is, absolutely. The problem is when we get to a quorum, right? If the communications were not on agenda at a notice meeting, when we have those serial communications that constitute a quorum, then that's an open meeting law violation. Splintering and polling. So again, this is the same kind of thing occurs when members have separate or serial discussions with a quorum and relay that information received from each member to the others. Hey, I went and talked to this member and they think this, and I talked to that other member and they think this, and so we should do this. So not having those kind of communications, just be really, really cautious about that. And it's best to avoid even the appearance of impropriety in that regard. As you requested spoken wheel, we can't rope in our staff to do what we can't do ourselves. So I can't ask the staff member to go talk to each member of the public body and have those kind of communications. So I can't use the county administrator to go poll all the members of the Board of Supervisors about an item that's going to come up on the agenda for the Board of Supervisors. So the bottom line is it can be a violation to conduct discussions even between less than a quorum if the purpose is to circumvent the law. Just be very, very cautious. It's okay for me to go talk to one other member or 2 other members, but we want to be really cautious about getting towards that quorum. And I cannot use email to get around the fact that we're not having a public meeting, because email can constitute a public meeting as well. And that's not just email, that's what other kind of social media posts or texting or whatever communication it is, to use anything to discuss alternate method of communication, to propose legal action, to discuss legal action, to deliberate about legal action, or take legal action. So email among a quorum or other communication is a meeting and a potential violation. Passive receipt from staff is okay. So if staff member says, we're going to put this item on the agenda at the next meeting, or this has been a concern that staff has received, or whatever it is, that's fine if the response is limited to that particular staff person, but it cannot be disseminated again to the entire body. So do not reply all. It is a good idea to have an open meeting law reminder in email communications so that people don't accidentally reply all. This is mostly a public perception issue, is when we have a social gathering or event and members of the public body that might constitute a quorum would show up. And so you have to be careful not to discuss anything remotely related to the business of the public body when that happens. So something that we do when, for example, the Board of Supervisors, there's a major event, like the governor comes down to speak to folks, and members of the Board of Supervisors would want to attend that. If we have 3 members who might be in attendance, we're going to prophylactically notice that as a meeting with no agenda, just so the public is aware that a quorum of that public body might be present at this event. We're not planning on having a meeting. There's not going to be any surreptitious discussions. Nothing untoward is happening, but we're just being fully above board with the public that those people might be in the same space. So what happens if public action is taken in violation of the open meeting law? That action is null and void. It can be ratified, though, within 30 days of discovery of the violation, or when it should. That does not allows that action to move forward, but it does not cure the violation. And what that means is there can be consequences for the open meeting law violation, and those consequences would still apply, but the action, the vote of whatever that public body was, could still be valid if ratified.
Can you go back?
Yep.
What's the distinction between discovery of violation or when should have known?
So we had an instance where there was allegations that a body did not properly notice the meeting within 24 hours because it didn't get posted on the website. And so we didn't know that that happened or didn't happen. When we find out that yes, indeed, that it wasn't, or when we should have known that that wasn't posted within 24 hours, then we can go back and try to ratify it from that.
Yeah, what I understand is the should have known date.
So
Like, yeah,
theoretically, we should have known.
instantly. So it's within 30 days of the violation. in that
Probably
case.
of the day before the meeting, correct. But there may be something where, I don't know, hypothetically
Yeah.
speaking, the website went down or whatever it was. We're having global outages in computers today.
Mhm.
So we might not have discovered it until later. So ratification must provide notice 72 hours prior to a ratification meeting. Has to describe the action to be ratified. We have to state with intent to ratify the prior action. You have to tell the public where they can obtain a written description, all deliberations, consultations, and decisions that preceded that action and that are related to that action, so that they can be informed of what's going to be happening at that meeting. This time, actions taken in violation of the open meeting law are null and void. The Attorney General, the county attorney, or a member of the public may bring suit for violations, and a court can order compliance with the open meeting law. And here's where I just want to make sure that all you civic-minded folks do not end up getting some problem. There are civil penalties that can be imposed for a violation of the open meeting law, and a court can impose that for knowing violations by members, anyone that aids or agrees to aid or attempts to aid. The first time is going to be a warning and probably an educational session where you're going to have to sit through an open meeting law training yet again and listen to somebody like me drone on for half an hour, which might be even worse than the civil penalty, I don't know. But the second time is going to be $500 fine, and then the third time, subsequent offenses, is $2,500. The court can award attorney fees as well. So if a member of the public brings that suit, hires an attorney to do that, that could happen. If the court finds a member intended to deprive the public of information or an opportunity to be heard, the member can also be removed from office. Yes, sir.
These penalties are on the individual, not on the commission, correct?
That is correct, and we'll see here. Again, the public body cannot pay a fine assessed against an individual, so Pima County is not going to pay for that. The individual has to pay it. Nor is the county going to hire counsel to defend the open meeting law enforcement action unless there's a specific statutory authority to do so. Folks, so the bottom line again is that the purpose of the open meeting law is to focus on transparency, keep you folks out of trouble, and build trust with the public. Each member finds review the open meeting law materials before taking office. You can, in the Arizona Tourism Material Agency Handbook, which is online at their website, or I believe also on the clerk's page, and through the Arizona Ombudsman. So if you have any questions in the future, those would be the first place to go look up what the open meeting law says about a particular topic. Any additional questions that I can answer at this time?
I have two questions.
Go ahead, sir.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Would it be a violation for more than one person on the commission to be at the same time? Or would that be a violation of the open meeting law?
So you broke up there a little bit. I didn't hear that middle part of what you were saying.
So, we're allowed to meet with the media and talk to the media, am I correct?
That is correct.
But what if more than one person should meet with the media at the same time? Would that be a violation of the public meetings law?
So if you had two people meeting with the media?
Two or more.
So, again, I don't think that is likely to be a violation of the open meeting law as long as the communication about the item that might be coming before the public body is disseminated to the public. If you're going to have a quorum of the public body meeting with the media, I would notice that as a actual meeting.
Okay. One more question. To me, current events sounds like a catch-all phrase. What exactly do we mean by current events then, specifically in this case?
So it's just a general report of what is going on with things that have happened between the last meeting and the current meeting for that particular public body. It is not proposing information or an action. It is not information related to an item that would be on the agenda. So, for example, I'll give you an example that the county administrator would bring up during that item on the agenda is Pima County won an award for every year pretty much. Our procurement department does a fantastic job, and they're recognized with whatever that particular certification is. And so again, this year, the Pima County Procurement Department has been received this recognition. That would be something that's in current events.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Turkowitz.
Yes, sir.
We're going to have an election between this meeting and the next meeting of this body. One of the things that might reasonably be discussed is issues identified during the conduct of that election.
That would be an agendized item. Yeah.
But is that specific enough of an agenda item, the descriptor there, issues identified during the conduct of that election?
Probably. It depends how broad those issues are.
Well, and there may not be any issues identified. I find that hard to believe, but it's...
So generally, I would say yes. So for example, report that is in the last few to been an after action report that is delivered to, for example, the Board of Supervisors about the election. That can just encompass all of the things that were found that were potentially issues, things that went well, things that didn't go well. Again, our thumb should be on the scale to give as much detail as possible to the public about what we're going to actually be discussing. So if you know that there was a specific problem with e-poll books or something like that, then we might want to put that in the agenda item.
Yeah, we had an issue at one election where the printers were too heavy for the tables they were on, and it caused the printers to work improperly. So, but something not known before the election, but probably merits discussion at the meeting after the election.
Absolutely. No, that's, that is one of the purposes of this commission, right? So, again, I think what the general description is likely okay. If there's a particular incident that is going to be problematic, that elections handed out orange pens instead of black pens or something like that, then that would be something to potentially be more specific about.
Yeah. But we're on a pretty tight window between the election and the next meeting of this commission. So not everything may be known with that finite detail, but can be encompassed, I think, appropriately as current events specifically stated as identified problems by individuals that merit discussion at the meeting.
Certainly. So the deadline to have something noticed and agendized is 24 hours before the public meeting.
Okay.
So,
Can I ask just a what-if kind of question? Let's say that something is coming up and will be part of the Board of Supervisors' next meeting, and some savvy reporter ends up getting 3 or 4 of the current supervisors to, talk briefly in an interview, and they kind of give their thoughts on how they feel about a certain issue. As long as that issue is on the agenda, they're not in violation of anything. Because maybe I'm just, I don't know what rabbit hole I'm going down here, but it would be a way for each of those supervisors to figure out before that meeting how the others are voting.
Correct, and that's a specific exception in the open meeting law,
Okay,
right?
okay.
We actually want to encourage our elected officials to communicate with the public. And
Okay,
having them tell us what they think about a particular issue is important.
okay,
So that is not a violation as long as they are telling the public, I am for or against X, Y, Z. Here's why. That's a good thing. That's what we want our elected officials to be doing. They're being open and transparent about it. The public knows about it. It's not a decision that's being made behind closed doors in a smoke-filled room.
that's, okay, thank you.
We have a practice when, say, for example, I have something that I think the rest of the commission should read. I will send it to Vanessa, and she will send it to the commission. What are the limits? Where does the boundary line between what she can send and what she can't?
She can send materials like that to the commission. Nobody can respond to that communication, right? Not like, oh, I agree, that's great. We should definitely put that on the agenda. If you wanted to communicate privately with the chair and say, I think that should go on the agenda for the next meeting, that's perfectly okay. But replying all to that kind of communication is strictly prohibited.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, folks. I appreciate your public service and good luck here.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next two items. Ooh, it's contagious. On the agenda are some more issues brought up in the governor's task force. The first one is discussion on cross-county voter registration. As outlined in the task force, I think this is something that I think makes good sense. Let's do it one way and not two ways. And basically the essence of what they're saying here is if somebody moves within the county, they can change their voter registration up to and including the day of the election. If somebody moves across county lines, and where this could be problematic to some degree is in the town of Marana. You can live in Marana and live in Pima County, and you can live in Marana and live in Pinal County. You haven't left the city, but you've left the county. And the fact that you've left the county means you can't vote because you have to change your address outside the 29-day restriction. I personally don't feel strong feelings one way or the other, but I think it should be one way or the other, not two ways. Does that make sense? You know, either let people that can vote within the 29-day limit because they stay in the county, then let the people that cross county lines do the same thing, or nobody gets to vote within the 29-day limit. And I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I just think it should be one way, not necessarily one way and the other. Discussion.
Chair
Commissioner
Bickle, I would
Caswell.
agree. One way or another, a decision should be made. I do not think that we should be changing voter registrations up to the day of election for those that have relocated. Unfortunately, we have an uninformed voting public that tends as an inspector, and I would encourage all of my fellow commissioners to, and I know some have in the past, such as Commissioner Tillman, worked elections, been the people in the voting center. Unfortunately, our voters tend to disenfranchise themselves most often by not handling their personal business. Unfortunately, 29 days is a cutoff period, but using Avid and with our voter rolls already in a disarray, I do not believe that allowing a county to cross-county voter registration day of election with the issues of certain communities that cross those county lines is a reasonable thing for us to be doing until we've addressed everything to do with our voter rolls and voter list maintenance. Avid and Eric included. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, discussion? Commissioner
I
Stewart.
concur also that it should be one way or another, and I also don't think that we should, try to do things within that 29-day cutoff period.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, this wasn't set up as an action item, so we won't take any action on it, but second item is discussion.
Question. So we discussed these here. Do recommendations ultimately go forward to some other body?
If we vote on it as an action item and specify that a recommendation be provided to the Board of Supervisors, that would be where it would go. That's the body that we answer to.
All right, thank you.
And it doesn't have to be me that makes that motion or recommendation. It can be anybody on the commission. The next item is discussion of voting rights restoration as outlined in the governor's task force as well. Again, having run for public office several times, now worked with people trying to gather signatures. Not only can people that don't have voting rights vote, they can't sign your petition legally. They can sign your petition, it's just an invalid signature. And I think there's some confusion on the part of former felons as to when, how, and whether or not they can actually have their voting rights restored. And this is one of those issues, in my opinion, sometimes we run into the legalese that Mr. Jerkowitz talked about, where depending on which side of the street you're walking down or whether you're in or out of the crosswalk, maybe you can get your voting rights restored and maybe you can't. So I think, again, this is another issue that I would certainly consider taking an oring vote on it one way or the other, as to simplifying the process for restoring voter rights, rather than having multiple options as to how prior felons' voter rights can be restored and when they're restored. But it's something that would require legislative action because it is in statute, and simplifying things that have been obfuscated with significant verbiage, I think, can be simplified to make life better for everybody and give people that have made restitution and paid the price for the actions that they took to function as citizens within the community again. So just something that I think may merit further discussion. Anybody have any other comments, questions, or suggestions?
I also concur. I think from my political perspective, we have far too many laws and far too many people who run afoul of them, and they should be given the earliest opportunity to be able to vote on those issues.
Anybody else? Okay, future agenda items, if nobody has any that they want to present today. Vanessa, the next two, and I believe we've got at least two more. If you'll put those on the agenda from the governor's task force. And if there's anything that happens on July 30th or before, please let us know, and we may put it on the agenda as well.
I'd like to make a public speaker. We in the public speaker. We heard some examples from previous elections of problems with chain of custody. I would like to have on the agenda the recorder talking about how they do handle chain of custody in this particular election. How do they deal with the post office and so forth?
And please note that that is a request of the chain of custody, or the county recorder, not a demand, since we have no authority over that office.
Chairman, I would also like to request to add an item to the agenda, as the recorder will be present, and we have a Supreme Court decision on La Familia and Fontes. I would like to discuss the federal-only voter rolls and the numbers of active federal, this and that lawsuit
Okay.
decision from the Supreme Court.
Okay. Next meeting, or any more future agenda items? Okay. Next meeting is scheduled for August 6th. Anybody have any problems with that date?
Are we doing a count then?
Recounts on Saturday, right?
No,
Friday?
no recount.
Oh, no recount. Oh, okay. Anybody have any problems with August 16th? Okay. There being no further business, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all for being here.